On June 13, 2002, a black-skinned man entered a police station in the state of Florida. He looked like a criminal, but he appeared to be bleeding. He said to them in a sad and pained voice, "I am the Black Ripper. I came to turn myself in because I'm tired and my conscience hurts me." Surprisingly, the police officers in the office laughed at him and treated him with mockery, and most importantly, they didn't take the matter seriously. In a simple investigation, they told him, "Go away, go away." A few days later, he was contacted again to have the charges brought back against him, and he was investigated by federal agents. The man left them in shock, as he had turned himself in, and the procedures passed simply and without logic. No further action was taken, so the story ended with the criminal returning to the police. He turned himself in again and said to them, "Why hasn't anyone been arrested? Guys, I'm telling you that my conscience hurts me, my hands are at ease, and you treated me with mockery and didn't pay any attention to the innocent lives that were taken by the police." They laughed again and said, "You know that every day 2 or 3 people come in confessing to be the Black Ripper, and yet their conscience hurts them. Like them, go away, go away." You might think I'm exaggerating or that the story isn't true, but in this video, I'll make sure you know. In the entire history of the United States, there was a person who had a principle from the beginning. From the very first day, he decided to be the greatest Ripper not only in US history but in world history because he had all the qualifications for it. And before we get to know him and the genetic and hereditary reasons that distorted his personality, you should know that he was a skilled hunter, and his method was terrifying. He knew how to choose the right moment and the right place. I tell you with all honesty, and I narrate to you a strange and mysterious story on this planet. And as usual, before I begin, let me remind you that we are still boycotting and continuing, and don't forget that even if you like this video, patience is required. Today, I will tell you about the most dangerous and infamous serial killer in US history, that person who defied human nature and embarked on a strange project that is unimaginable. The story began in 1982 when the police found the body of an African girl on the highway leading to the city of Pascagoula in the state of Mississippi. The girl had been stabbed in several areas of her body, and her appearance indicated that she had been subjected to severe violence. Her body showed signs of severe beatings and bruises, in addition to unnatural swelling on her face. All this evidence pointed to violent assault. She had been beaten on the mouth, forehead, and face. And from here, I tell you an important fact that will be the focus of our discussion, the fact that equality between whites and blacks at that time was new in the United States. Although the laws affirmed equality between them, racism was deeply rooted in society and present everywhere. Blacks were treated as second-class citizens, so much so that when the police saw the body of a black man, they didn't treat it the same way they treated the body of a white man. And thus, the story of this video was shaped by this reality. When investigators began examining the girl's body, they found out that she was a 22-year-old girl named Melinda Rose Labrie. Due to her appearance and skin color, this girl had been unable to find decent work. And this sentence is not my invention, it is written in the investigation. Even the authorities recognized that racism had a major impact and was a cause of problems at that time. And when they opened an investigation to find the killer, the main goal was to identify this bloody perpetrator. However, no one moved in the investigation, even though several suspects were arrested. Unfortunately, none of them were charged because the killer was among those detained, but the investigation ended quickly, and the charges were directed at an unknown person due to insufficient evidence. 2 months later, the body of another 26-year-old black girl was found, named Patricia Ann Mount. The girl was killed in the same way, with stab wounds to the neck, bruises on her face and body, and a bloody, violent scene that made no sense at all. When the investigation began seriously, several suspects were arrested, but no charges were proven against any of them. The killer was among the suspects, but there was no evidence to fully implicate him. The police transferred the investigation to the Federal Bureau, and the matter was escalated. The suspect was sent to court for trial. Although the court initially convicted him, he was later proven innocent. He remained detained for 6 months pending investigation, and even after the acquittal, he was illegally held for 2 more years, there was no law allowing this. They were convinced he was the killer, but due to insufficient evidence and unverified witness statements, he was released and returned to committing crimes. Then he turned himself in again and said to them, "Why hasn't anyone been arrested?" The number of crimes he committed was countless, and every time he was released because he proved his innocence through various means. He would provide evidence showing he was far from the crime scene, like a phone call from another city or proof of his presence at a movie theater or mall via cameras. Every piece of evidence confirmed he wasn't at the crime scene, and he used these methods to prove his innocence every time. There was always conclusive evidence proving he was far from the crime, and he used this to show he had nothing to do with it. Later, the scene shifted. After repeated incidents, authorities began to believe the killer was a white man and that the only black suspect was the real killer. And every time he was arrested, as mentioned, he was released without sufficient evidence to fully implicate him. These events continued for many years. Then came November 5, 2012, when the real story began. On that day, a man named Samuel Little was arrested. He worked as a supervisor at a homeless shelter. However, upon arriving at the shelter, he was required to sleep there, so he stayed among the homeless, not as a supervisor. He was disciplined, quiet, and didn't cause trouble. He was hired at the shelter for a small wage, but it wasn't enough, so he turned to side work to cover his expenses. He had no choice but to deal in contraband. Of course, he didn't deal with strangers. All transactions happened inside the shelter. He was selling illegal substances to the homeless, offering them an escape from their harsh reality. When shelter officials found out, he was arrested with 4 kilograms of illegal substances, a very large quantity. This marked the start of a new, unimaginable chapter. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, all the crimes had been committed by the same person, and he was always released due to lack of evidence. At that time, there was no DNA testing, only fingerprints or traces like the killer's hair or bodily evidence on victims were used. All this evidence was kept until the day Samuel Little was arrested for drug trafficking in the shelter. In 2012, a DNA test was conducted, matching the results with DNA from old cases. The results matched. Samuel was the killer behind all the crimes committed over more than 30 years. Despite all the evidence against him, Samuel showed no willingness to confess. He always maintained his innocence, attributing all the crimes to himself. Beyond his claims, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. DNA proved his involvement in all the crimes, and the matter was closed. For 8 years, lawyers and investigators pressured him to confess, but he refused. Every time, he would say, "I'm innocent," and the situation remained like this until 2020. Then, Samuel decided to confess everything and revealed to authorities his true motives, and, most shockingly, he disclosed crimes far stranger and more horrifying than previously known. Before discussing the mass graves he dealt with, let me tell you about his life. Samuel was born on June 7, 1940, in California. When he was 1 year old, he moved to Lorain, Ohio, because his mother was struggling and wanted to live with her grandparents. His mother wanted to live with her grandmother, as she couldn't care for her son alone. These circumstances led Samuel and his mother to move to Ohio. Samuel was a very ordinary child, and his grandmother didn't spare any effort in educating him. She made sure he studied until he reached high school. But before that, his grandmother moved to Omaha, the largest city in Nebraska, because Samuel kept getting into trouble at school. Other parents demanded his expulsion due to his extreme aggression. They moved to a new city hoping for a fresh start, but unfortunately, things worsened. Since his nature didn't change, his gang tendencies stayed with him. In 1956, at age 16, instead of attending high school, he was placed in a juvenile rehabilitation center after a failed grocery store robbery. After a year of attempts and procedures, officials declared him a violent and harmful person to everyone around him. He was released without any real change in his personality. He remained like this until age 20, when he decided to live with his mother in Florida. He dreamed of becoming a boxer. There were many boxing gyms and rings, and he had extraordinary physical strength and ferocity. He was considered the successor to Muhammad Ali, but circumstances didn't help him. He worked various jobs, as a butcher, in a slaughterhouse, in a hospital, and finally as an ambulance driver. Once, he was arrested for drunk driving an ambulance, causing an accident with a patient inside. He was supposed to transport the patient to the hospital, but instead, the ambulance crashed, injuring the patient. In the end, he received a light sentence because he was under the influence of drugs. This was his 8th arrest in Florida alone. By age 24, Samuel had been arrested over 16 times, with all kinds of charges. Everyone saw him as a lost cause. He had been arrested in 11 different U.S. states. By 35, he had been arrested 26 times. Yet, he entered a new phase in life. He joined the most powerful gang in Mississippi. There, he got an idea and decided to earn a title no one could rival in history. He began a new plan that remained hidden for a long time, until 2020, when Samuel Little confessed to all his crimes. Many things were revealed. First, DNA was found on 93 victims, meaning 93 girls were confirmed to have been killed by him due to DNA matches. Yet, when he mentioned the number, he laughed and said the real number was much higher. The horrifying thing was that when interrogated, he described the features of the girls he killed with such accuracy that their photos matched his descriptions perfectly. For example, when describing Melinda and Labrie, killed 38 years earlier, his details were shockingly precise. Everyone was stunned by his memory despite his old age. He could describe 93 girls in detail. When asked to name other victims, he described over 400 girls. The situation was shocking and illogical. How could he remember over 300 girls without knowing their locations? He was forced to explain his strategy, the idea mentioned at the start of the video. From the beginning, his goal was to become the greatest serial killer in history, as he wrote clearly in his diaries. He dreamed of entering the boxing world to prove Muhammad Ali wasn't the king of the world. He wrote this in his diaries, insisting his dream was unfulfilled. Despite his physical strength, boxing skills, and love for the sport, he was never given the chance he felt he deserved. So, he turned to another field. Samuel entered a world where he could only prove his worth by being utterly heartless. He planned to become the most infamous killer in history, starting his crimes young. His strategy relied on targeting the lower class. All his victims were black or, for example, Mexican immigrants. His first criterion was that the victim couldn't be a U.S. citizen or a white European. The second was their lifestyle. He targeted night workers or people without steady jobs, regardless of gender. What mattered was that they had no official records. He would get to know a girl for 3 or 4 days, lure her with drugs, take her, and kill her in the same brutal way described earlier. His second criterion was targeting the homeless, people no one asked about or cared for. Homeless people usually had little money, and passers-by ignored them. He would hunt them, kill them, and take their money. The easiest victims, those he could kill by the hundreds or even thousands, were illegal immigrants. At their weakest, when they were at the border, he would go to the area, pick a spot, watch through binoculars, and as soon as he saw someone approach a vehicle, he'd rush at them. If they ran, he'd hit them with his car, injuring them instantly. If they didn't speak English, he'd kill them immediately. He used these simple methods, and in the end, he'd chant, "I am the king of the world." He lived by this principle, always saying, "If there's anyone stronger than me, it's my father, who could leave me alone." This was the trauma he carried inside from his mother. It never faded. Anyone who appeared in his car would be killed. According to his diaries, he loved killing with bladed weapons, preferring them over firearms because they showed greater strength. He claimed that when he killed, he channeled the spirit of ancestors who conquered land with blades. When discussing the immigrants, he asked police to take him to where he buried his victims. Over 100 bodies were found. He admitted he didn't know their names or identities because he didn't understand their language. One of his favorite things was placing bodies in his car, driving fast with loud music, and when tired, burying the body to wait for another day of killing. All his victims were from small, remote villages. He'd go to these towns, enter bars, meet his victims, and stay until he killed. This continued until he claimed 400 female victims, though the confirmed, reliable number based on DNA was 93. But Samuel's crimes didn't stop there, they expanded to a second group no one cared about, illegal immigrants. At their weakest on the border, he'd watch through binoculars, rush at them, and if they fled, he'd hit them with his car. If they resisted, he'd threaten them with a gun, take their belongings, and kill them. Sometimes, he'd mock them, "If you dance or laugh for me, I won't kill you." In his diaries, he wrote that when committing a crime, he'd arrange for a look-alike friend to be in another city as an alibi. The friend would provide proof, like a store receipt or ATM record, to confirm Samuel's presence elsewhere. Since he'd been investigated over 50 times, he was confident no detective could catch him. He defended himself by claiming he had proof of being a victim, that he wasn't involved in any crimes. This proof helped reduce his sentences, but the court considered public and victims' family sentiments, refusing leniency. His defense relied on genetic analysis. His lawyer presented documents claiming Samuel had aggressive genes, making his behavior uncontrollable. This was scientifically proven, though unprecedented. But remorse fixes nothing. As Samuel neared death, he asked prison officials to bring investigators. He said he'd finally reveal his secret and handed over his diaries. Instead of saying, "I'm innocent," as usual, he confessed to everything. His final question was, "Did I really earn the title?" An investigator replied that official newspapers called him the most dangerous serial killer in U.S. history. Over time, this was confirmed. Samuel was deemed the deadliest killer in U.S. history. At the investigation's end, he spoke strangely, like an ancient warrior from Inca or Viking civilization, obsessed with killing and combat. One last fact, over the years, more than 60 people turned themselves in, claiming to be the Black Ripper. They all wanted fame. After newspapers labeled Samuel the worst killer, people surrendered, hoping for the title. Criminals would confess to any murder, and investigators even fabricated crimes to say, "You did this." The goal was the title. I'm Mystery Whiskers, and see you in the next video.